Hi, my name is Amy Tobin and welcome to my hair lab. Today I'm going to show you how I teach a full head of foils to my students with my tips and tricks in the mix. There's so many foiling techniques and likely 100 different ways to attack a full head of foils. I have found the techniques that I'm going to show you to be a great way to be precise, organized, avoid over-processing, and avoid bleeding foils. We're going to assume that our client wants to be very light, so there's going to be a lot of foils. I make sure I have all my tools ready. A tail comb, sectioning clips, duckbill are my favorite for foiling, pre-cut foils, a towel, a water bottle, just in case, lightener, and perm papers. You heard me right, perm papers. I don't do foils without them, and soon you'll see why. I start by dividing the head into 4 panels. That T-section that you learned the very first week of school, you're going to use for pretty much everything, and foiling is no exception. I start at the nape area, and here's where the tricks start. I foil the hairline so when the hair is up, they see the brightness. As well, when their hair lays in front on their shoulders, what hair will be in front and center? You guessed it, the nape area. If you don't do the hairline, the color can look not as bright. However, the client may like the contrast, so be sure to ask in the consultation what their preference is. My rule of thumb is the size of your section should be thin enough for you to read a text through. If you can't see through it, it's just going to be too thick. Lightener requires very small sections. If the sections are too thick, the top of your section will look great, but the underneath part is going to be orange and blotchy. So approximately 1/8 of an inch is perfect. You also want to make sure that your sections aren't too wide for the foil. This can make the foil unstable and bleeding of lightener much more likely. So here's my tip. Make a peace sign. This peace sign is approximately 3.5 inches, but it's a great visual to keep your foils the perfect size. I like to weave at the hairline for a more natural grow out. You can alternate weaving and slicing because this is going to give you dimension in the color. I like to work across each section so that everything processes more evenly instead of doing all one side and then all the other. I start with a low developer and increase the volume of my developer as I move up the head. This is going to ensure that everything processes at the same rate. The nape section will process the longest, so using a lower developer allows it time so it won't over-process. Low and slow. The top section isn't going to have as much time, so you can use a higher developer to speed things up. Using 10 volume, I start in the nape, weaving the hairline and then slicing right behind it. This layering of foil will give lots of brightness without a stark line. Remember, this technique is key to brightness around the face as well. After the first couple at the hairline, I then start skipping sections. The first few sections I don't leave a whole lot out, maybe about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch. But the closer the foils are together, the brighter that section's going to be. If they wear their hair up, this works really well. I put the tail of the tail comb in the top of the foil with the foil wrapped around the comb. This allows me to anchor the foil and allows me to perform yet another trick that's coming up. Be sure to lift the hair so the foil can get as close as possible to the root. Pull down nice and snug and start applying the lightener at the midshaft, working up toward the root. Once you get a little product on the foil and the hair is sticking, you can let go of the hair and anchor the foil at the top using your fingers. You do not want to pass the edge of the foil, as this will cause bleeding. Go right to the edge and then place the perm paper at the root. Perm papers will catch lightener as it expands, so the lightener will get on the paper and not on the hair. I'm telling you, this is a game changer. Some clients get really warm sitting there under all the foils and the lightener expands more than you're expecting. The perm paper is going to give you a little bit of a safety net in case this happens. Once the hair is saturated with product, you need to close the foil. I like to move fast, so I only fold once. Now, that little fold over that we did with the foil at the root, using your tail comb or your fingers, unfold it so it's protecting the scalp and hair and fold over one side. If you fold your foils too tightly, you may end up with creases in color. It can actually wipe off product at the creases of the foil, so fold gently. I realize some stylists really like the foil packets, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. This is just my preference. If I'm working with shorter hair lengths, a smaller packet can actually work better. As I move into the back, I leave a little more hair out in between the foils. This is because it's hidden under the rest of the hair. We can forget that some contrast is actually needed for brightness. Think of it this way. If you turn a light on in a bright sunny day, you might not even notice the light, but turn a light on at nighttime and the whole room lights up. Sometimes a little darkness gives depth and contrast, which can actually make the blonde look brighter. Now, I'm still foiling, but just leaving slightly larger gaps, 3/4 of an inch to about an inch. Again, this is going to depend on the client. It's possible they may require the same sectioning throughout, depending on how they style their hair. So be sure to address this in your consultation. You may be doing 2 or 3 foils across the head in the back, depending on the size of the head. Once you reach the crown, keep spacing closer together, as hair can often split in this area. This again is going to give you more brightness. You will be transitioning from 3 across to 2 across, and then eventually 1 at the very top. Because the head is round, the amount of foils that can fit across a section is going to change. Now the back's completed, so go back to your first foils that you put in right down at the nape and check to see their progress. If they're done, you can easily rinse them out in the sink because, well, they're in the back. Hence why we started at the nape. If the entire nape is finished processing, then rinse them out. You do not want over-processed hair. Time to start the front. I like to start in the fringe area. Notice the sectioning here. I find that clients like a lot of brightness around the face. This doesn't need to be a money piece necessarily. However, making sure you keep spacing small to allow for maximum brightness will be important. I use horizontal sections weaving through this area to keep it soft. If you want a little more punch, you can do what was done at the nape and place a slice behind the weave. Just be sure you're keeping your sections thin or you're going to create stripes. Because the section is a triangle, you'll eventually narrow out with 1 at the peak of your section. You may need to fold your foils a little bit more to allow room for the other foils to fit. On the sides, I like to do the hairline the same way I did the rest of the hairline at the nape and the fringe. So between 2 and 4 foils, alternating weaves and slices, depending on the hair's density and desired brightness. Then I start horizontal sections, weaving up the sides. I like to weave because it creates softness and has a more natural grow out. You will notice your slices growing out if they stand alone. Layering them with weaves is a great way to blend the lines, and you can create more brightness where you want it. You can also opt for diagonal slices. This is very fast and effective. This can also be done in your back sections as well. So by now you may find that you've changed your developer from 10 to 20 and maybe even 30 for those last few foils. Be sure to examine the hair. If you have to keep it low and slow for the whole process, then that's what you need to do. But in many cases, changing the developer will work just fine. Continue checking your foils as you go and rinse out if necessary. You can also use your water bottle if there's only a few pieces. Be sure to blot with a towel and not rub. Rubbing the hair with a towel in its delicate state can cause breakage. I often use a porosity equalizer on the hair. I am using OPC's Black Cream Lightener today that helps tone the hair as it lightens, and it also enhances product absorption with activated charcoal. Because it's a cream, it has conditioning agents in it which make it more gentle and suitable for foiling and scalp applications. No powder dust in the air that I'm inhaling and no ammonia. This means I can breathe. Over the years, chemicals have taken a toll on my lungs, and using products that make breathing possible is so refreshing and extremely necessary. I love OPC for this. My friends at R&R Distributors are giving you 10% off your first purchase for the month of August only. Made in Italy, their products contain organic and ethical ingredients that I'm sure you're going to love. You need to check them out. The link is in the description below. Just use my code AMY10 to get 10% off your very first purchase. OPC also has a shampoo to use after all chemical services that eliminates all chemical residue called T-Support Alkaline Shampoo. This can also be used before a chemical service if there are residues on the hair that could compromise the chemical service. Mineral deposit from hard water can actually block lightener. Once foils are rinsed, I do my first shampoo, so I would use the T-Support Alkaline Shampoo, and then, because the hair is compromised from the lightener, I would choose a reconstructive or moisturizing shampoo for my second shampoo. OPC's Inca and Silk lines are my absolute favorite. The Silk Platinum shampoo contains a violet pigment to neutralize yellow tones that are present in the hair. Adding these violet pigments onto porous hair can actually start the toning process, pre-toning as it's called, and can help the hair receive the cool toner if that's what you're looking for. I always tone the hair. Even if it's with clear, it is absolutely necessary. The cuticle is open from the lightener and needs to close. And we need to replace some of that pigment that was removed during the lightening process. This is just best practice. Healthy hair, always. A porosity equalizer is a good idea, as you will find that there are some areas that are just a bit more porous than others, and they're going to receive the toner differently. For more even and consistent results, spray on the hair before applying your toner. I would finish with a reparative mask like OPC's Inca mask, again putting an emphasis on healthy hair. Be sure to be gentle with heat after a lightening service. Flat irons, curling irons, and even blow dryers, if too hot, can cause the pigment to change and cause damage to the delicate blonde. Sending your clients home with proper hair care is not optional, especially with blondes. Blondes have to use extra care, and the right product can be the difference between beautiful, shiny hair and dull, broken hair. When you examine the hair, make your choice for the products. Maybe even build it into the price of the service. It's that important. I hope you enjoyed my full head of foils, and if you're interested in any of the products I mentioned today, click those links in the description for great customer service and amazing products that are designed with you in mind. Thank you so much for joining me in the Hair Lab today, and until next time, have a great hair day.